Good morning, traders. I'm Emily Ivani, the CEO of the Investment Banking Institute and your host here at NewsWare's Trade Talk. Joining me is trading anchor Bill Olson, who brings more than 30 years of institutional trading experience to our program. At Trade Talk, we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Today is Monday, April 28th. Stocks are coming off a green week last week as we prepare for the final days of trading in April. Following a choppy session, all three major indices closed higher on Friday. The Dow clawed back from early session lows to add 20 points, or 0.05%. The S&P 500 advanced 40 points, or about 0.75%. The Nasdaq climbed 216 points, or 1.25%. Bill, let's get into a new week and today's action with what is happening in the markets this morning.
Yes. Good morning, Emily. I'm watching the S&Ps. We're down 0.13%. Not bad. We've been, having a nice rally as of late. We're kind of reaching that pinnacle point where it's going to cause futures to get a little more cautious before taking another leg higher, if that's possible. But we do have a lot of earnings coming out this week, so anything's possible. But it's a key trading week because there's so many earnings, there's so much economic data coming out, and then then we have a lot going on with the trade talks. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he was on the news radio over the weekend, hitting the circuit, and he's talking about how the Trump administration's tariff plan. He expects that a de-escalation with China in the short term, followed by an agreement in principle before an actual trade deal is worked out in the coming months. That's really the narrative for all of their, trade deals that they're working on. They come to a broad agreement with details to follow. But, hey, that's better than nothing. Bessent, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is going to be interviewed this morning on CNBC. There could be something there. And next week, he's got to appear on Capitol Hill. So, that's going to be interesting. Fed officials, they're all on blackout. You got that Fed meeting coming up next week, and so the Fed officials are in blackout this week. But this is a key week for economic reports. We get the GDP coming out, we get the PCE coming out, we got non-farmers payroll coming out, and more. And in terms of earnings, Honeywell, Pfizer, Coca-Cola, Visa, Starbucks, Microsoft, Meta, Qualcomm, AMGN, Apple, Amazon, all set to release this week. So yeah, we got a lot happening. And then, we want to turn our attention over to Europe for a second and see what's going on in the European markets. And I got to tell you, we're seeing green, which is nice to see. You're looking at the DAX. The DAX is up 85 points, or 0.39%. You're looking at the FTSE, still positive, 6 points, or 0.07%. And the Pharma is doing good in London. In Germany, we're seeing gains in autos, techs, financials. They're all having good moves, and the CAC in Paris is up 46 points, or 0.61%. The European markets are positive that there could be a trade deal soon. And then we're taking a look at Asian markets, and we're looking at the Nikkei. The Nikkei jumped 0.38%, or that's 134 points. Remember, they could have a trade deal this week. A trade deal could be announced this week. This is very possible. That's something to keep an eye on. Hong Kong, on the other hand, finished flat. It was down 8 points, or 0.04%. The Shanghai in China was down 0.2%. The thing about China is Chinese officials expressed confidence in achieving their full-year targeted growth rate around 5%, but they held back on announcing any additional stimulus measures from their Politburo meeting on Friday, which is what the markets kind of were expecting. But that's okay. In Hong Kong, financials and techs did show strength, but you got weakness in consumer stocks and property stocks, so they kind of balance one another out, which is why that market was kind of flat overnight. Then we're turning our attention over to oil, and oil remains a key sector, in the market. I mean, oil is trading lower this morning. You got WTI at $62.71 a barrel. You got Brent at $66.56 a barrel. While the trade talks with China news is positive for the markets, the fact of the matter is OPEC is set to release additional production this week. And they're talking about raising the production levels significantly in June. So that's a lot of production about to hit, which would flood the market. So you're not surprised to see oil prices weaken, at these $62, $66 levels. We'll see if it can, break 60, which it could do this week. But that's what I have for you in terms of morning market update report, Emily.
Bill, you said it yourself. This is a key week of trading with a number of key indicators to follow, and we'll be following all of them right here on NewsWare's Trade Talk because we have Newsware at our fingertips and we're able to follow all of this information very quickly, very easily, and very accurately. You did mention economic reports throughout the week, even with the Fed blackout. There's key economic events happening. Of course, we're continuing to monitor trade talks. And the other area, you listed a whole host of companies that are releasing earnings, and this will be a key driver of markets. So, Bill, let's start there on this Monday. What is going on in terms of earnings action?
This morning already, we got Domino's Pizza, ticker DPZ, David Paul Zebra. They beat by 33 cents, but it was done on lower revenue. Shares are off by about 3.9% this morning. But upcoming tomorrow morning, you got a host of them like Honeywell, ticker HON. Their EPS is $2.21. Expected move is 4.82%. You got Coca-Cola, ticker KO, Kilo Oscar. Their EPS is 71 cents. Expected move is 3.13%. You also have AstraZeneca, ticker AZN, Apple, Zebra, Nancy. Their EPS is $1.10, and the expected move is 4.83% when they release tomorrow morning, Emily.
And that is a lot of information to keep track of. And so many reports coming out. Again, you're using your Newsware and earnings alert to really track all of that information. You'll also be tracking economic data throughout the week. You did give us main headlines here on the economic reports that were being released. We're even easing into the week here on a Monday. So, Bill, what is going on in terms of the day's economic events?
Listen, the economic calendar is a little light today. 10:30 a.m. you get the Dallas Fed manufacturing survey. Okay, but and the Fed officials, they're all on blackout because you get a Fed meeting next week. But Wednesday's GDP report will be like the first key reading of the week, and estimates are, this is like an estimate for Q1 growth in 2025. It's expected to, see a decline. To show a sharp, actually it's going to be positive 0.4%, but that's a big sharp decline from 2.4% in the Q4 of 2024. So that's going to show some of the concern the market has with the Trump tariffs. Then, Thursday, you get the PCE data, you get manufacturers and the PMIs coming out. And then Friday, of course, you have the non-farm payrolls numbers coming out. So we got a lot going on this week. But today is a little light, Emily.
And as those reports hit the tape, you'll see them right away with your economic alerts. And as we're trying to navigate all of that information and the markets this week, it's clear that you're prepared. You're not just prepared for today, but we can hear that you are anticipating what is upcoming. Again, you're using your Newsware to do that, setting it up with alerts along with earnings reports and economic events. You also look at things like merger news, guidance news, shareholders meetings, buyback news. You group your stocks together like your FANG stocks and your Dow 30 stocks. So, Bill, what else do you see is possibly moving the markets today?
Let's see. I'm looking at Amazon. I'm looking at Apple. I should say. They may not manufacture the 20th anniversary iPhones outside of China. Remember, they've got 20 years of developing these phones in China, so there is some expertise there. So they may not do it, but they got to be careful. It's a lot of it comes down to the tariffs. The 145% tariffs really have to drop for them to be able to accomplish this. Amazon. They've been having this Prime Day year after year, quarter after quarter, but it's really losing a lot of its luster. And that's due to the cost of tariffs. With these high tariffs, Amazon's Prime Day is, not being as prime. That's for sure. Google, their browser chief told the judge on Friday that, only Google can run Chrome. So, her reasoning didn't really make sense because, we have 17 years of experience in running Chrome. Nobody else has that. Yeah, true, but okay. We'll have to see. Let's move on to Dow Jones 30 stocks. We got Merck, ticker MRK. They're in a deal to acquire SpringWorks Therapeutics for approximately $3.9 billion. I mentioned this last week that they were looking at taking them out. Boeing. This is what I also said last week. Riyadh Air is willing to buy the Boeing planes if not delivered to China. bam, we mentioned that. Sure enough, a willing buyer stepped up because everybody wants those planes. Also, in merger news, Deliverzoo, they confirmed that they got a deal proposal from DoorDash. That could be something. Some deals could be worked out there. In terms of shareholders meetings, Genuine Parts, that's ticker GPC, Grace Paul Charlie. They're having a shareholders meeting today. It's a virtual one that starts at 10 a.m. Tomorrow, on Tuesday, American Express, AXP, and Citibank, ticker C, they're both having shareholders meetings that start at 9 a.m., so keep an eye out for those two. In terms of catalyst calls, NEO, ticker NIO, Nancy, India, Oscar. I see that Citibank placed a 30-day positive catalyst watch on shares of NEO, NIO. And that's what I have for you in terms of a morning market update, Emily.
This is the type of data that NewsWare delivers daily. It's factual, it's market moving, and our alerting functions bring it to your attention as it happens. Go to www.newsware.com now and sign up for the trial and see for yourself the benefits that professional Newswire delivers. We've now made it to that time of the show for the Trade Talk Pick of the Day. Nice little run here going in April with the Pick of the Day. Don't mean to jinx it, but Bill, you're watching a lot of information today. What is your Pick of the Day today?
I'm going to go with Cisco, SYY, Sam Yellow Yellow, the food services company. Earnings are tomorrow morning. EPS is $1.03. Expected move is 7.97%. Then you look at Friday's call volume, 662 calls versus 105 puts. Wow, that's a lot. And then you get the open interest, 39,016 to 15,551. Like that, major brokers do like it. They got positive ratings on it. So yeah, I want to get in $70.50, somewhere around there, between $70 and $70.50 would be a good entry price. But that's my pick of the day. Cisco Systems, SYY, Sam Yellow Yellow, Emily.
Cisco, it is on an earnings play. And coming up before we sign off, we will do a recap on Friday's pick of the day before we get to trading. But first, let's take a look at the current breaking headlines that have hit the tape in our hot off the press segment. Bill, take it away.
Okay, what do we have here? Report out there saying dollar could fall further if jobs data are much weaker. Scott's Miracle Grow, SMG, Sam Michael Grace, CEO reports strong POS unit gains. Marriott, ticker MAR, Michael Apple Richard to acquire Citizens M brand for $355 million. AZZ, Apple Zebra recommends $100 million stock repurchasing program. Spirit Aerosystems is divesting certain assets to Airbus and enters an MOU with them, a memory of understanding. Now, Boeing's buying Spirit Aerosystems, but there are certain assets that they have to divest, and it looks like Airbus is picking those up. Pfizer announced phase 3 CREST trial met primary endpoints. Okay. Domino's Pizza posts surprise decline in first quarter U.S. same-store sales as consumer curbs spending on dining out amid high inflation and macroeconomic uncertainty. That's all I'm saying this morning, Emily.
Okay, Bill, before we get to trading today, let's do that check-in on Friday's pick of the day, which was RTX Corp. Now, you picked this one. It was in the defense sector, and you made this pick following news that there was that $150 billion funding package. You were looking for the 122 area. I saw it have a nice little run on Friday. Bill, how did your call work out?
Had a good run. Stock opened up at 122.73, fell down to 122.41, then ran and hit a high at 125.50 before closing at 125.22. So, it was bid 122 when I made the call. So it wasn't a horrible, price target. It was understandable, but this really had a positive day. The entire sector had a good day, but an opening of 122.73, running up to 125.50. Nice day. It was a winner. RTX, winner.
That was certainly a nice little payday on Friday there, Bill, and we will check in with you tomorrow about today's Cisco pick of the day. Bill, thank you as always for your expert insight. Join us back here tomorrow and each weekday morning this week at NewsWare's Trade Talk when we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Again, I'm your host, Emily Advani, here with trading anchor Bill Olson. Traders, you know what to do. Let's go out there and make some green.